Brothers War gave us a lot of interesting and new artifacts to build around. Typically, Wizards design cards for standard and arena formats with the hope that they work in Modern and Pioneer without any problems. Well, what if I told you Smelting Vat, a 4-mana artifact, is making moves in Vintage? This video is sponsored by Opera GX. Opera GX is a special version of the Opera browser specifically built for gamers. It's my personal favorite browser, and what's even more sick is that they've just got onto mobile and it can be connected to the desktop version of Opera GX, and you can download it right now with this QR code on screen. My favorite feature of this browser is the accessibility. I'm the type of person who has loads of tabs open, and with Opera GX you can chat and browse simultaneously with social media channels like TikTok, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Discord, Twitch, and many more. My favorite is getting Spotify integrated and listening to those true bangers. This feature allows you to keep all of your social media at hand in your browser and get notifications from all social media apps that you use to access them quickly and efficiently. The browser resources are perfect when you want to keep many tabs open, not to lose them, but you don't want your browser to hurt your gaming performance. So with GX Control, you can limit the CPU or RAM that you're willing to let your browser use while gaming, listening to music, or making content. And with the network limiter, you can limit the network bandwidth used by Opera GX to gain performance in games and streams. As you can see, using GX Control really does limit the amount of CPU that your browser uses and makes this a very user-friendly software. Today's deck all starts from a tweet by I Am Actually Level 1, a fellow Vintage content creator who knows his stuff about the format. The combo of this deck centers around Smelting Vat, allowing you to sacrifice an artifact and look at the top 8 cards of your library, putting up to 2 artifacts less than or equal to the sum of the artifact CMC that you sacrificed. This is quite a complicated trigger, but I'll make sure to have some gameplay on the screen now so you can kind of understand what you're looking to do with it. So an example is you can sacrifice Serum Powder and you can get Grim Monolith and a key, untap the Smelting Vat, netting you 2 mana and looking at the top 8 again as you can untap it. The win condition of this deck is to keep activating Smelting Vat until you find a Time Vault and a key to untap the Time Vault to take infinite turns. To execute this combo, we have a lot of fast mana in the deck, including all of the Moxes, Black Lotus, Grim Monolith, Degenerate Lands, and more, and we also have 4 Defense Grid, a good disruption card that we can sacrifice to Vat if it is useless in the matchup. Round 1 starts off and we're on the play, and we have a great game 1 hand because we can turn 1 Lodestone Golem in the blind, which is typically good against most Vintage decks. For those who don't know, Lodestone Golem is actually restricted in Vintage, meaning that you can only play 1 copy in any deck, and this is because of its static ability, its power and toughness, alongside cards like Workshop. So to start off this game, we'll use Workshop and Grim Monolith to get enough mana to get the Lodestone Golem down. As Golem is quite disruptive, the opponent kind of durdles on their turn. They play a load of artifacts, Sensitive Divining Top and Gitaxian Probe to look at my hand, and then just ship back the turn. We top deck the Mightstone and Weakstone, but that doesn't matter because we can play Serum Powder, Lion's Eye Diamond, and Smelting Vat, and then sacrifice the Serum Powder to try and find Time Vault and Manifold Key. So I sequence it, we cast Serum Powder first, then the Smelting Vat, then we can cast the Lion's Eye Diamond to activate. Remembering the wording of Smelting Vat, we can only put up to 3 CMC onto the battlefield, and we don't manage to find a Manifold Key or an untapping effect, meaning that we have to take Sensitive Divining Top and Grim Monolith so that we can attempt to combo more. On top of our deck, we find a Voltaic Key, and we also see a Black Lotus, which is great for an additional Smelting Vat activation because we need a lot of mana, and sacking a Grim Monolith isn't very high CMC. So we replay the Voltaic Key, use the Grim Monolith to untap the Smelting Vat, and go for it again. Sadly, again, we don't find a key, so we're just going to have to take another Sensei's Divining Top and a Black Lotus to respin and hope to find it. Now on top of our deck, we have the Time Vault Manifold Key combo. For those who don't know how the combo works, look at Time Vault, ignore all the text apart from the fact that you can tap it to take an extra turn. As it doesn't untap, you can use Manifold Key for 1 mana to untap this, then on your next extra turn, you untap it again and take another extra turn. Hopefully this is a quick and easy way to understand this infinite turns combo. Now here's the problem. I don't have the mana or card draw to actually draw these 2 cards and put them into play right now. So what we can do is draw Manifold Key with our Sensei's Divining Top and then sacrifice Lodestone Golem so that we can put the Time Vault into play around a counterspell, and we either have Voltaic Key on the next turn to combo kill them, or maybe we can find a way to keep going with the Smelting Vat. Now I find a Trinisphere, which is actually interesting because Trinisphere heavily disrupts the opponent's style of game plan because I assume that they're on Paradoxical Outcome. Now, we cannot take the Trinisphere and the Time Vault because the Lodestone Golem is 4 CMC, so I tanked for a long time and ended up deciding to take the Sensei's Dividing Top and the Trinisphere just because I wanted to disrupt the opponent. I'm not too sure if this is correct though. The opponent activates Sensei's Dividing Top on their end step, then in their main phase they cast a Time Vault, and then they play a Tolarian Academy, pay 3 mana for a Manifold Key. Yeah. So this is a kill on the board because they just need to make one construct where there's a Saga and then they have infinite turns and will attack me for lethal. So, on to game 2. As our board is tuned for Karn the Great Creator and there aren't too many flex spots, I believe that there's nothing in our sideboard that we want in the deck. We just want to focus on comboing out the opponent before they combo us, so I just submit it back. Starting off game 2, we have a very nice hand with fast mana, defense grid, and smelting vat. Not too much to say about this hand, let's keep it and get a defense grid down. Because of defense grid, the opponent obviously has to play sorcery speed, so they get a volcanic island, play a mana crypt, and a hull breacher, which makes drawing cards awkward for us, but our deck doesn't really draw cards. Speaking of not really drawing cards, we find Mystic Forge off the top of the deck so we can just slam that and really try to get value off of any cheap spells off the top of our library, which we do find too. As defense grid is on the table, the opponent can't really do much apart from play a Narset, activate it, and attack for 3, really not posing a threat to us. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this next turn is very messy. We get the Smelting Vat down, we start comboing, and because Mystic Forge is on the table, we really get to manipulate what we get to cast and get from Smelting Vat because we have so much information from the Sensei's Dividing Top, the Mystic Forge, and also all the mana that we have in play, so we end up actually assembling the combo and getting Time Vault and Manifold Key, and the opponent scoops on our first extra turn. Very interesting game and shows the power of defense grid. To start game 3, we keep an interesting opening hand. On the draw, I think it's fine because we have Urza's Saga, fast mana, and Sensei's Dividing Top to help tune our draws. The opponent leads off with a fetch land and a ponder. For our draw step, we find a nice workshop, but I'm just going to start off with Soul Ring and activate Sensei's Dividing Top with the floating mana. We find 3 interesting cards, 2 mana sources, and a Karn. It's not the best to see 2 mana sources, but at least we have a win condition. For the opponent's turn, they play a Time Walk, and then on their additional turn, they play a Pithing Needle, naming Smelting Vat. As we know Karn the Great Creator is on top of the deck, we can use Mana Crypt and Soul Ring to cast the Karn, and if they have a counterspell, we can use Urza's Saga. Sadly, they have the Force of Will. So we just cast our Lion's Eye Diamond and play our Ancient Tomb and hope that the construct beats can get there. We're really relying on Urza's Saga to win this game, as we do have a second one in our hand. I think it's going to be okay, especially making it... Yeah, Alpine Moon, getting rid of Urza's Sagas, that's not what we need to see. Now we're going to have to hope that this one construct can actually win the game, as we know Sensei's Dividing Top is on top of our deck, and a workshop is beneath that Sensei's Dividing Top. This is looking rough. However, this is Magic the Gathering, and when you thought things could go badly for you, they have the Urza's Saga, as well as the Bifrost to destroy 3 artifacts. Yeah, I think we can see why we lost this game. Too many sideboard cards, plus Force of Will, plus so many mana sources on top of the deck. I believe that if we just drew more threats, this game would have gone differently. But it happens sometimes. The opponent wins this game by using Underworld Breach and Brain Freeze. Brain Freeze obviously lets them fill up their graveyard for the escape cards, and then they'll cast a lot of spells, and then Brain Freeze me for lethal. Very rough, but it happens. Cool deck, unfortunate games. Going into the next round, we're on the draw, and we keep an all-spell hand, specifically because we can play Mana Crypt and Grim Monolith on turn 1. The opponent starts off with Urza's Saga, Black Lotus, and plays a Shieldred, putting us into a somewhat awkward position, but I think Trinisphere might be able to disrupt them a ton. Like the luck sack we are, we rip Mishra's Workshop off the top of the deck, meaning that we can first cast Defense Grid to play around Force of Will, and then cast Trinisphere. I decide here though that I'm going to cast Grim Monolith and Manifold Key first, because you can use Manifold Key to untap the Grim Monolith, and as Trinisphere disrupts my hand and makes my spells also more expensive, I wanted to get down as many spells as possible this turn, and we even have an extra mana to get the Sensei's Dividing Top on the table. Funnily enough, we cast the Trinisphere and the opponent attempts to Force of Will because you can see they're paying life in the top left, but obviously because of the defense grid, it has to hit the table. Now, Shieldred is no joke, it will win the game, so not only do we need to find something with Sensei's Dividing Top, we need to take the least amount of damage as possible from the Mana Crypt, and also be thoughtful about when we draw a card, we lose a lot of life. With Karn the Great Creator on top of our deck, seen by Sensei's Dividing Top, it is our only win condition in the top 3 cards, so we have to do something with it. What's also nice is that Karn will shut off any artifact that they get from Urza's Saga, as most vintage decks don't play Pithing Needle in the main. Using Manifold Key, Serum Powder, and Grim Monolith, we can draw the Karn the Great Creator, And then now we have the choice between plus or minus. I decide to plus on the defense grid because defense grid and Trinisphere both have similar effects, and we know that they can't cast the Force of Will in their hand, and I really want to chump this Shieldred as we're taking a ton of damage from our draw step and from the mana crypt. We would just die if we minused. The opponent gets a Soul Ring, we block the Shieldred, take 3 from the Mana Crypt and 2 from the Shieldred, so we're now on 5. This means that on our next turn we'll actually die if we lose the Mana Crypt flip, unless there's a way that we can destroy it and cast something relevant. But I think for a long time with this current sideboard, you can see it on screen, but I come to the conclusion that the only winning line is to hard cast Wurmcoil Engine from the sideboard, and then hope that I win the Mana Crypt flip so I can attack with the Wurmcoil and gain 6 life. Obviously, this is putting the game down to the win of a coin flip, but I couldn't find a better line. Please let me know down below if you see anything else. We lose the flip, and we lose the game. Rough. Really rough. Going into boarding, I decide that there are no cards that I want in the deck. Don't forget, we have a lot of diluted sideboard cards because of Karn the Great Creator, and I don't think Dismember is typically good against the Shieldred deck because it's actually unlikely that they get Shieldred out turn 1 specifically, because they only had Black Lotus that game. But going into game 2, we have a Nuts hand with a ton of mana, and the opponent leads off with Flooded Strand, Mana Crypt, and Tinker. Well, for those who don't know, they get Bolas's Citadel, and as everything in their deck costs basically nothing, they can essentially kill us way faster than we can kill them. And I think this represents a lot of vintage. You can have any deck and you can just still lose to the classic combos. And that's how this format rolls. People hate on this format a lot, but don't forget there's a lot of the time where we will be the ones playing turn 1 Bolas's Citadel. If you're playing degenerate stuff, the opponent's playing degenerate stuff, it's all the fun for YouTube. Going into the final round of this video, we get absolutely dumpstered by Mono White because of their disruption with Wasteland, Thalia, Archon of Emeria, as well as Seasoned Dungeoneer and the Initiative cards. I have to admit though, game 2's on me. I did keep a somewhat risky hand and they absolutely blew me out. But overall, this deck, I think that it is good. I think the core focus of the deck is good. The problem is that in Vintage, any deck can lose to nut draws, and I feel like we didn't get to display the true power of this deck. For those who don't know though, I'm going to Barcelona this weekend, so I've been doing a lot of preparation for that, and if you are there for the Legacy European Tour, then let me know, come and say hi. That's going to be it for this video. Please expect more Magic content soon. I'm sorry for the lack of uploads this past week. Check out this YouTube video because YouTube thinks you'll like it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.